Hello, and welcome to that F1 show. Welcome to this week's podcast. And just want to start by thanking all of you who listened. This is marks our first month done, so all sort of just over 200 unique accounts that listen to our podcast via. Well, all of them. Main one being Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So thank you to all you out there. And just one thing, just apologies on the sound last week on my microphone. So we'll have hopefully cleared that up this week, and it'll sound a lot more crisp. So welcome to a lot of you to your first off week. I'm sure long-time F1 fans are used to the frustration that goes along with it not being on after having it for 2 weekends. It's a long 2 weeks, isn't it, Roger?
It is. It's still not as bad as a summer break when you've got 4 weeks of no races, but 1 week off is doable.
Absolutely. And this time next week we'll be breaking down the Australian Grand Prix. So 7 days. Let's go.
I know, can't wait. And it's going to be early starts, obviously with the time difference. So we'll have bags under our eyes, Alan, next week in this one.
Absolutely, yep. So our plan basically for these off-week podcasts, obviously we'll normally be talking about the race, but it's our chance to talk about some things that happen outside of race weeks, such as, say, rule changes or schedule changes or different things that will happen. Also gives us a chance to answer some questions that you have about F1 or about us. So with that in mind, please feel free to DM us on our social media. You can email that f1show@gmail.com, or if you have any other way of getting in contact with us, please do ask us any questions, whether it's about us, whether it's about Formula One, if you want us to explain something. So to kick that off with this week, Jenny had asked me to explain, or us to explain, how do points work with drivers' points and constructors' points. Jenny's a new fan who got in very much via Drive to Survive. So basically, with points, first place down to 10th place in a race gets points. So you have 25 points for first place, then it goes 19, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and if you come in 10th place, which Hamilton did last week, you get 1 point. It's funny, Hamilton's obviously never finished 10th, so at the end of last week's race, Bono told him, "You're 10th, mate." And he's like, do we even get points for that? And he's like, yep, you got one. Which, as we know, last year he went into the final race of the season.
That has to have been a dig on Hamilton's point of view. Who even wants to finish 10th?
I know,
if you get
exactly.
a point. I think on that, Alan, you said second gets 19. I think second gets 18, but you might have got that from Leclerc, because he got the fastest lap.
Yep, you're correct.
Totally fine. So second gets 18, but all the others were correct.
Yeah. So apologies. Second gets 18. And sorry, just on that last point, Hamilton obviously went into the last race of the season level on points with Verstappen, so that 1 point could prove crucial. Excuse me. If Mercedes get their act together. So, and just on that, then if you set the fastest lap of the race, you get 1 point, but that point only counts if you're in the points. So if you're 11th place and do the fastest lap, you don't get an extra point for that. But if you finish 10th and set the fastest lap, then you'll get an extra point. You'll get 2. So 2 drivers in each team. Basically, those combined points are your constructors' points. So if you finish 10th and 9th, your team gets 3 points. So yeah, that's how it works. Obviously, it varies. Some races they'll have 2 drivers in each team finishing the points. Sometimes there's a great drive from one. Sometimes there's not. So a lot of teams don't, or a few teams. A lot of teams last year actually wouldn't have got a lot of points, but the new regulations this year have made it that almost all teams, barring 2 or 3, have got points, which is incredible.
Yeah, it is. And I think I like that. I really do like the point system. Hasn't always been this way. The point system probably came in, I'm not sure how many years ago now, but whenever I was growing up, the point system only was, I'm not sure if you remember this, Alan, was only the top 6, which is crazy. So it was first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So first got, so it's 10 points, 6 points, 4 points, three, two, one. So like obviously if you finish first, you got 10, then six, four, three, two, one. But the that pretty much meant like if you can imagine now and how it has been the last few seasons, you had Red Bull, Mercedes always the top. Maybe you had Ferrari, McLaren pushing for some of those, but everybody else struggled to get points, and that's why there's some of those dominant years with certain drivers and in point systems. So like we need to create this a little bit more even and give more people points. So I definitely think it's so much better now. I personally would. I think it would be great to trial a season. I think it's a little bit more. I could be wrong in this on how MotoGP do it. How if you finish like points go the whole way down, so you get the most for finishing, you get 1 point for being last, but you have to finish, and the points
Okay.
go the whole way down just to see what it does. And because there's times at the bottom whenever you get no points, even like below 10th, like 10th down to 20th, those guys can have really, really good races, but it's never talked about or never remembered because there's no points. Whereas if there were points the whole way down till the end, it could be good and it could just show you who is actually better throughout the whole year.
Yeah, it would give you a
But
it would give you a definitive last place
yep, yep,
because so many of the recent seasons it's just been 0, 0, 0, and then you've got a couple of points.
yep. So I think that that's something I would love to see trialed 1 year. I'm not sure if it would be that favorable, but for sure I'd like it. Just to see. But definitely, this is so much better. The first to 10th is so much better than first to sixth, the way it used to be. Obviously, like the constructors' points is the drivers' championship, just for Jenny as well. I'm sure not sure if she knows this now, but the drivers' championship has nothing to do with the financial side. That's all constructors. So that whole battle between Max and Lewis last year, that none of that has a financial implication, but the constructors' championship between Red Bull and Mercedes did. So yeah, that's points.
Sorry, can you hear my cat?
I can.
Can you?
I can.
Oh, sorry.
Todd's fine.
Do you want to talk about Vegas quickly, and I'll let my
Yes.
cat out?
Yes. Would love that. So obviously announced this week is Las Vegas. So next year, Las Vegas is on the calendar and it looks great. So they put a clip up on social media saying how it was with Daniel Ricciardo and Hamilton, and this was back in 2017. Whenever they were saying, "Oh, what would you love for now? The new owners are in, or it's all changing. What would you love for the future?" And Ricardo was like Las Vegas, and Hamilton was like Miami. So both of those are now happening,
And
which is
do you think they knew those were on the cards?
this was my thought. Whenever I seen this, I was like, they must, and this must be a publicity thing to see.
Yeah,
But
because it doesn't. You don't just think of a race, apply, and do it the next season. Surely it takes
yeah, well, that was
years.
2017, so it has taken a few years to come about. But maybe like it could very well be. I'm not too sure, but either that or they're like, oh, we never thought of that. Let's give that a go.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
whenever they said it, so but I
And a
think
big change in terms of it's going to be a Saturday night as well instead of
yes,
a Sunday afternoon.
yeah, which is amazing for obviously the American market is great because it's Saturday night. What good entertainment that's going to be, but also for the rest of the world. So for us, we can get up in the morning. We've got a race. Australia gets to watch it. China, all the like every it's really good globally. It's a really good time, and it will look phenomenal. Like I'm not sure if you've ever seen. I've never been to Vegas, but
I've been.
so have you?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I
So
was 14, so it was a very different experience of Vegas than I'm sure a lot of people have. But
yeah,
but
I'm
yeah, it was
sure.
phenomenal.
But from photos and videos that I've seen, Vegas looks like two totally different places in daytime and nighttime. So I think at nighttime
Absolutely.
it's definitely going to be a great night track. Am I loving that there's so many night races? Not so much. Not so.
Why?
I I don't know. I think first of all, I think from what I hear from the drivers as well, whenever they're interviewed, they like them. They're like, oh, I like how the cars look and all that stuff. But like even Carlos Sainz done a really good one. He's just like the glare of the thing's not as good. Like it's just like they can't.
Okay.
they can't see the crowd as well. Not that you're looking at the crowd when they're driving around, but they do say that if you're there, like during daytime races, you see everything. It's just your attention is slightly more. It's slightly different for them as drivers, but also like I like them. I like them. I just personally, I just prefer normal day races.
Okay, that
But
makes
it's
sense.
just I think so. But for sure, going down the strip is going to be incredible. Like, and we talked last week, Alan, on the last podcast. The Ask Alan question was if you could pick a city, where would you pick? You obviously picked Paris, but Las Vegas is a great one. Like, they have Miami coming up in a few weeks, which has never been there. But whenever they say Miami, Las Vegas, straight away I'm like, I would go to Las Vegas. I would go to see that, 100%. Miami, would I? Maybe. That's just me. I'm sure it's going to be great. Like, I can't wait to see it. But Las Vegas one sounds like that. Just sounds like it's going to be so good. Like, you can just see. You can imagine once they cross the line. I know the start finish straight is not bang where the fountain is, but like it's
Okay,
just going
yeah.
to look spectacular. It really is, and they're going to put on a show. Like, it is
Oh yeah,
it's a city that puts on shows. So,
oh,
town,
absolutely.
city,
S-
it's a city. It's a
yeah,
city
it's a
for
city.
us.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Biggest city in our country is 1.5 million people. No, not even. Sorry, that's our population.
and the whole population is gone to the city on that day.
Yeah, exactly. Biggest city is what, Belfast with five. Is it 500,000? So yeah,
It's crazy. So
you'd
yeah,
probably pack that. You'd probably pack that in to a couple of hotels in Vegas.
yeah.
So
But
it'll be incredible. Like, especially,
it is.
yeah. And the whole point of it being at Saturday night is to show off Vegas.
Yeah.
So it'll be amazing.
Would you go?
Probably not. I do, of all the, if like we're never going to go to all the races. So if we had to pick and
Such a bad
choose,
fan. I'm just joking.
I think Vegas for one isn't easy to get to. I don't. There's not a direct flight for us. We would have to fly to LA, and
Yeah.
hopefully we could get a direct flight there. And then either you
Road
fly
trip.
up or
Just
you take a road
yeah.
trip. Yeah. That, and then it's like when, I don't know, like if you've ever been to a live golf event, and well, actually I know you have.
Yeah.
It's the novelty of it is fantastic, but from a viewer point of view, you see so much more on TV. So I
do.
think especially somewhere like Las Vegas, you're gonna get the whole picture and the whole like festival of Formula
Yeah.
One on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I'd
so
say, so I've been to Silverstone a couple of times and a few of the other Grand Prix as well. Silverstone do a phenomenal weekend. They really do. Like, there's so many races, there's gigs, there's loads of food, different places all around, drinks places all around. There's lots going on. I've been to some of the other races, there's not so much. But like, you can just imagine Las Vegas, every hotel is going to have some concert going on. Like, everywhere where you go, it's just going to be a full on party for 4 days. So I think I'd go. I'd go. So 100%, I would love to go. Um, this week, well, not even this week, a few yesterday or today, just on social media stuff. Whenever Formula One put this up, we made a comment just saying. So I just put a comment up just saying, "What about London?" Like, as a potential track, and I know there's somebody made a comment saying, like, you've got Silverstone. I was like, in my mind, I was like, what do you mean you've got Silverstone? Like, I know we've got Silverstone, but surely you could do London as well. So America having three, and then he's like, well, you've got one. Then, so it was just interesting. The conversation sort of went around size, and it's just like, well, America's huge. Like, you've got now East Coast, West Coast, and Central, which I totally agree with. I think it's great. I really do. I think it's great that they've got three Grand Prix. Um, Size-wise, we know Monte Carlo is one of the most iconic Grand Prix. If you're going by
the
size,
most prestigious,
yeah, it is tiny. So you'd clear that off if it was about size. But I think it's
and it's
with
never about size, Roger.
it's not. It's not. So it's all the manufacturing. Most, not all. Sorry, there's two maybe of the guys who do not have their factories based in the UK. I just think Silverstone is. It's like Monte Carlo. Silverstone is Silverstone, and it always will be. But I think a London race as well could be fun, but I don't think that's going to happen. They have tried it. They've looked at it. They really got close a number of years back there, but didn't happen. So,
I didn't know that. Oh, I'm sure. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm sure they are constantly just seeing what options
looking
are
at
out there.
different places, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Las Vegas. Another thing that has been asked, Alan, question that was sent to us this week is about going back to last week's race in Jeddah being the most how can I describe it? Between Charles and Max, most gentlemanly race where they're like, you go first, no, you go first, no, you go first, no, it's like you go first. So all around DRS. So DRS has been a question across social media, and a question that's been asked to us as well is DRS still needed? These cars are designed so that you could follow better. So why do you need DRS? So what do you think? Do you think DRS is still needed? We'll come on to Jeddah in a minute, but first of all, touching on DRS, do you think it's still needed? Sorry,
Oh,
just for people who listen might not fully know what DRS is. DRS is might have mentioned it in one of the episodes when we began. It's pretty much on the rear wing where there's a flap at the back. So as the cars drive in a straight line, the more resistance that they have, the harder it is for a car to move fast. So the rear wing is there as a slight bit of resistance to create downforce. But they press a button if they're within 1 second to the car in front that opens a flap on the back, and that lets the air. It's not so there's less resistance, so the car can go quicker. So if there's a car following and they're in DRS range, they can go quicker than the car in front, up to I think it's 15 miles per hour.
15.
So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So
And it
what do you
stands
think
for
happens?
it stands for drag reduction system. So yeah, the whole idea is it reduces the drag on the car. Um, it's a good point. I'll be honest, it's not something I've ever thought about before. So from that point of view, I do love it. I don't know if I suppose you're asking me how necessary is it. That I don't know. I suppose we'll find that out. Obviously, Jeddah is such a fast track with two very real DRS straights.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere different in Monza, where there's quite a short one on the start finish line and then quite a long one. So there's really only one place where that's really effective. So on sort of shorter, windier tracks, we'll, I suppose, realise whether it's needed or not,
Yeah.
because the whole point is you can follow, especially into corners.
Yeah.
But no, I personally love it. It's just like back in 2009, 10 when they had the KERS system, which effectively is just their battery charging what they have now. It was basically a button they could press. They could recharge the battery or build up the energy in the battery and then press that. And it's almost like nitrous oxide in Fast and Furious. Like it just allowed them to go that bit quicker. I think if they took it away, they'd bring in something else. Like they're always trying to make it more exciting, add little features.
Yeah.
But last week it maybe wasn't necessary, but it created another dynamic, which is why it was so entertaining. Like
Yeah.
that race, like one of the biggest talking points was that DRS battle where they were fighting and jostling for position. Like you say, you go first, you take it this time, I'll get it when it's important. So yeah, no, it adds another dynamic, and I think it's part of what makes it exciting. Do you
I
need
agree.
it to race close? Maybe not, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it
keep it
definitely
in.
does. Like racing is about overtaking, and like it's about trying to see how well someone can defend, how well can someone attack, and DRS adds that. I still like it. I think it would be. I don't think it would be as good without it, but I definitely. So I think it's a benefit for sure. The question that was asked was why was this race so different to the others? Like why have we not seen this before? Obviously, we've seen when it was at Jeddah, the penultimate race of the season last time with Max slowing down so quickly and Lewis and he brake tested and they went into the back because they both wanted to be at that line second. So we had seen a glimpse of this before. They obviously knew that this was there. So quickly, just to explain to you guys listening, so some racetracks are all different. Obviously, layout is completely different. But not only layout is different, but how they do the DRS is different as well. So some tracks only have one DRS zone, some have 2, and some have 3. So Monaco has 1, so it's hard to overtake anyway, but there's so few places to put a DRS zone, like there's so few straights, so they only have 1, which makes it obviously hard to overtake, and very few people even do on the main straight with a DRS zone there. Some will have 2 and some will have 3. So the reason why this track in Jeddah was so different is because they have 3, and it's a long track anyway. Actually, I've seen a picture today of the comparison between the first and the second race of the season. So Bahrain is there's a lot of straights in Bahrain, and it seems like a big track. When you see it in size comparison to Jeddah, it looks tiny. Like Jeddah it's a big track. It's the second biggest in the calendar, a bit like Spa. Spa's a long track. But I'll put a picture of the comparison up on social media for you guys to see. But the 3 DRS zones come within 4 corners of each other. So from the start of the first, if you're taking 3, the start of the first to the end of the third, there's 4 corners, and only 2 of those you brake at. So it shows you how much of an advantage it is to be at the end of the last one first. So that's why this was so crucial. So you've got the first one that they come to, they're getting closer and closer and closer. Then they have 1 corner, then they have 2 corners quickly after. But those in a Formula 1 car, you pretty much have your foot to the floor to try and get going into the next one. Then you've got the next DRS zone. That's where Max and Charles where Charles got right up. Max got right up and overtook Charles in 1 lap, and then Charles came back. But that's where on the second time, whenever they both locked their brakes, but then they've just got that 1 corner at the end before coming down to start finish straight, which is where there's so much of that long track at the end of the lap is DRS, which is why it's different. So every other track doesn't have that. The question was, what other tracks can we look forward to seeing this happening? I've looked through every track in the calendar to see if this is possible, and it's not the same. Sorry, slightly nerdy in this. I love maps and I love tracks. So look through. So just quickly, I'm not going to take long in this. Just quickly talk you through the next few ones. So obviously we've got Australia coming up next weekend. So Australia again has 3 DRS, but you've got the main straight, then you've got 2 corners. So first right, left, then you've got another DRS, but that's very short. Then you've got nearly half the lap until you get the third one. Then you've got 4 more corners. Then you're back to start finish straight. So you don't have this consecutive build up of fast areas where you can get closer and closer and closer and closer overtake. You've just got it's a bit more split. After that, we've got Imola, only as 1. So you don't have the 3 or even the 2. You've just got the start finish straight where there's DRS, a bit like Monaco. Miami comes Imola Imola, and Miami haven't yet said, interestingly, how many. From what I've seen, they haven't yet said how many there's going to be. I'm pretty sure they will decide that soon. But there's potentially, say, for 3, and there's a lot of straights in that. So, so I think Miami is going to potentially have 3 because they've got the straights. Then we're back to Barcelona in Europe, which has 2. But again, those are half a lap apart. So having the most of the tracks it'll be first half, second half of the lap, where they have the DRS straights. But yes, that's what makes Jeddah slightly unique.
I think with DRS, just lastly, and then we'll move on. But I think what's so good about DRS is that there's so much going on in the car that we don't see. Really, all a viewer sees is what's outside the car, just them going fast, other drivers coming up. We can't really see the nuance of what they're doing, and they are doing 1,000 things in the car. But with DRS, you see that wing open, and you can be like, oh, they've touched that button. They're within a second. It's a very visual thing to the audience member of what's happening in that moment. So I think it's great. If they were to take it away, I think it sort of takes away part of the viewing experience.
Yeah. Also, I'm not sure how many of you guys have ever played Xbox or PlayStation when you're playing the Formula 1 game. Like, you can be driving around and you're like, oh, I forgot to press the button. You're so focused on driving the lap and trying to keep it on the tarmac and try and do well, that sometimes you forget to press the button, even though you've got the little assist of a beep to remind
Yeah.
you to press the DRS button. So these guys, as you say, Alan, there's so much one. You look at a steering wheel, go and Google a picture of a Formula One steering wheel and see the amount of stuff that there is going on there. It's crazy what these guys have to do while going through the G-force of corners and straights and everything to even remember this. But yeah, DRS, that's DRS. But if you have any more DRS questions, please ask us. But I think that
I
that
don't
will
know
be
how
for
you
now.
could have any more.
Someone will have one.
But yeah, next thing is, well, it's current news kind of, but it should be old news, unfortunately, is this whole FIA investigation into what happened in Abu Dhabi at the end of last season. Obviously a title decider, depending who you ask. If you ask me, I think Hamilton was straight up robbed, but yeah, before we're going to talk
Mercedes
about
fan, obviously. For all you Red Bull fans, Alan's a Mercedes fan.
I'm a Lewis fan, which
You are.
this may be controversial once he eventually retires. I'm a free agent. I don't know who I support at that point. I'll take all the offers. But we'll move on and talk about Max and Lewis in a second. But there's a lot to come out. You can read the report online. I'll link it in the show notes if you can be bothered. But there's sort of 4 things that the FIA are bringing in as a direct response to what happened with Michael Massey and the 2 team principals. Just a quick summary. Basically, safety car happened, or there was a crash, safety car out, and without going into all the details, the 2 team principals, Toto Wolff for Mercedes and Christian Horner for Red Bull, were able just to get into the race director, who is effectively a referee, and just plead their case, and basically went down to who was the most convincing, if you look at it that way. So to stop this happening, the FIA are bringing in 4 sort of changes or things to help. One is effectively a VAR style room. For those of you who aren't into football, VAR is a way for a referee to look at a replay to make a decision for something he may have missed. So there'll be a team in Geneva that's fixed for every race, and basically they'll help the race director make a call. Now, it's still up in the air how effective this is and whether they're on the phone to him for every decision, or whether it's referred after the race. That's still up in the air. I suppose we'll find out probably after it's first used, because I'm sure they'll keep that in the DL, so there's no expectations for what happens. Second is now no radio communications with the race director. I think that was obviously going to happen. Basically, they said it was unfair for one person to shoulder that burden of people in his ear while he's trying to look at all the evidence, make the decision. Which actually brings them to essentially the 4th point, is they now have a race director management team, which is basically a support team, I believe, for the race director. So he's not one man with all that on his shoulders. He has a team around him who will help. And again, we won't know how influential they are until we have a decision that sort of divides opinion. And then 3rd point, going back, they're basically reassessing the unlapping procedures, which was the whole thing at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So they're basically going to reassess what's needed there and probably make a definitive ruling on either all must pass and they must pass at this point, something as clear as that at least, as opposed to leaving it up to the race director's discretion at that point. So what do you think? Do you think that's enough?
I think it's good. It's good moving forward from what happened, and their wording around how they've written a lot of stuff is very smart. Obviously, there's lawyers and so many people in this to say that it's the whole incident was done by human error. Yeah, it's just interesting how it's all been done. What the reason that rules are done is because something happens that they have no they don't know what to do with it, so they create a rule around it.
Yeah,
So
there's no precedent. Nothing.
yeah,
It hasn't happened before, so they need to address it.
all of this is great until something else happens and they don't know what to do. So which will come. It has to come. Things will happen. They'll like DRS. We've just talked about it. Say something happened or didn't happen, and there's not a rule around it. What do they do? So I think that's where, and something will happen in races to come in the future, and they'll be like, wait a second, what is the rule around this? Or what had happened in this race was there was a rule around it, they just didn't stick to it, or didn't fully understand it or think about it, which I fully get the whole thing with Geneva. The thing is, a race is going on. You've got time. How long do you give this? Like that was in the last race of the season, they had a few laps, which is what 5-7 minutes, and they needed to make a decision. Now, if that's going back for Geneva, they're chatting with the team. It's still the same thing where Toto and Christian Horner are still going to be like, what's going on here? We need an answer. And they're like, hold on, all you're doing is then, hold on, give us a second, we've got to go to the other guys. So it's like another line of communication, which is more time. Yes, they can make a call instantly and send that through. But if they don't, if they're like, hold on, we need to go into the rules, let's go through like how big is this textbook of rules? It must be huge. They always say, oh, rule number 23.BD. It's like, what is this going to be?
Well, the only thing is the team principals can't plead their case, so at least he'll have just his
which I
moment
like.
in
I
his
really
room.
like that, and we've seen that clearly in Jeddah with the safety car line with Perez and Sainz.
Signs.
So that nobody got involved. The two teams were like, "You should give this up." The other, like, "No, we should." So let's just do it. And it's nearly like going from primary school to secondary school. You're a bit old now. Sort it out yourselves. Go on. You know what the right thing to do is, instead of having a teacher to tell you what to do.
Sure.
That's really what it feels like.
And around this, one of the questions for this week was from Leah. So thank you, Leah. She DM'd us on Instagram. So if you have any questions, that's definitely one way to get in contact with us. She asked us.
Sorry. On you go.
She asked us basically, what's our thoughts on this whole human error thing? Should Max have won the title the way he did? Are we happy about it? And you've heard my answer. Lewis was robbed. However, Max absolutely deserved to win. So obviously a season is decided over, hopefully this season, 23 races. Last season I think it was 22, if not 21, because of COVID mishaps. Australia left, and then maybe 21 because Malaysia had to leave as well. But that one race doesn't decide a season. Moments decide seasons, but moments over a full season. So Max over the season, so if you can compare him to Hamilton, Max had 10 race wins, Lewis had 8. Max had 10 pole positions, Lewis had 5. Max led 652 laps, Hamilton only led 297, and Max had 18 podiums, so first to third finishes, and Lewis had 17. So over the season, Max led in every important statistic. So you could argue that he's a very deserved winner, and therefore take that incident out of it. Yes, absolutely, deserved world champion.
All the Max fans are going to be like, keep going, Alan, this is good. all the Lewis fans are like, statistics don't win races.
Absolutely, and
So,
the thing is,
like, there's so many races have been, like what we've seen over the years of Formula One, have been led. Every lap is led by one person, and then something can happen, and they overtake in the last lap, and whoever's second can win. So they led for one lap, still win the race.
Absolutely, 100%. And the thing is, the reality of that is that they were level in points going into the season. Up until about 7-8 laps to go, Lewis was going to be world champion. He had the tyres, everything.
Yeah.
Then the safety car happened. So in that moment, Lewis Hamilton was, I say robbed, you could say denied, whatever word you want to use. In that moment, at the end of the last race of the season, in my opinion anyway, I don't know if you'll disagree, Roger, Lewis Hamilton was robbed of the World Championship. Doesn't matter what happened during the season up to that point, because of Christian Horner and Michael Massey, who probably anyone in Michael Massey's position probably would have done something similar. It wasn't, the problem was the system in that regard, but because of his decision to let some unlapped cars through, that gave Max on fresh tyres an easy overtake, which he wouldn't have had. So
yeah, I just remember being in the living room. My wife was a massive Lewis Hamilton fan, and I just remember whenever I seen that car, Latifi's car, in the barrier, I just said they have to pit Lewis. That straight away, I was just like, they've got to pit him. Does it, like, there was enough? I instantly thought there's enough laps they need to pit him now, and just for how long he had been. But as Rafiki in the Lion King says, the past is in the past. It doesn't matter. Pretty much, so that is what the. So I think, yeah, when watching Drive to Survive, I just wonder, whenever you see that, how much does Lewis regret that break going into the first corner in Baku, whenever they're in Baku and going down? Max was at the race. He started in front of me. We started the race, and like there was very little to race. There was a few laps. I don't even know how many laps were to go.
I think it was
And
2.
he just went straight and no points. Like, think of how different it would have looked. Like, would that coming together at Monza, where Max ended up hitting Hamilton in the head, all that, would that have happened? Would he have drove differently? There's so many what ifs, and I think that's the thing that they're all now like, do you know what, we've just got to leave it.
Well, and to my point is that it's a whole season. It's not moments. Like, you could argue that moment robbed Hamilton, but equally Hamilton made Max crash at Silverstone.
I would love, if I could ask Lewis a question, I'd be like, what part of that season would you love to redo? That would be my, like, as in, if you could change one part of the whole season, what would you change?
I'd say he'd say the last thing, Abu Dhabi, because it doesn't matter up until. Oh, if
I think he could have got 25 points at Baku, and that would have meant that he was a full race. He had won it the race before. It was another race win, and all, like, the whole thing. I'm not sure if you remember back in 2000? I think it's 2008. Whenever Hamilton won his first championship, as a Ferrari fan, I was got it for poor Felipe Massa at Brazil.
Yeah.
So in front of his home crowd, Brazil being so passionate about Formula One with Senna and everything, he was there in a Ferrari, had won the championship,
crossed the line as
Glock,
the world champion.
Just the rain, the tire wear. Hamilton, he goes, is that, like, the commentary is like, is that Glock going slow? Hamilton came through, got the points he needed to win the championship. So I'm not sure if you've seen Sky with Martin Brundle done a really, really good piece. I think it was last year with Timo Glock and Massa together for the first time since then. They got together, and it was really, really nice. Like, Massa looked at him just like, I've never held anything against you, like, because Glock had so many people coming out and saying, you done this on purpose, and loads of threats and everything. Like, he had to be escorted by the police out of Brazil because people were just going for him. It was mad. But they asked Massa, was that the moment you think you lost? Like, he's like, that's not what I hated about that championship. He's like, it was the pit stop in Singapore whenever the refueling. So at that point they refueled, putting the fuel in, he drove off and the hose got stuck. And
it lit up.
He's just like, if I could change one moment from this whole championship, it would be that moment. And you're like, wouldn't even have thought about that. So I'd love to ask Lewis, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Let's start tagging him in a post and see if he gets back.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. If I saw Lewis, the one question I'd ask would be like, would you sign my hat, please? I'd be shaking and wouldn't know what to say.
Good odds that point with me as well. But yeah. So that's the question. So people have fired questions in. Let me finish with a question to you, Alan. Obviously, we've got to fit in our Ask Alan question in each week. So this week's Ask Alan question is, so thinking of all the tracks on the calendar in different countries, what nationality would you want to be to have your home race at that track? Does that question make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So where would you want to have the fans cheering you on because that is your home race?
Yeah.
What track do you want?
I think it has to be Monza. I think, and I'm sure as a Ferrari fan, you'll probably agree. Monza is the home of. Am I right in saying that's the home of Ferrari, or is Imola the home of Ferrari?
The home of Ferrari, so it's in
As in,
Maranello,
like,
Modena. So close by,
but, like,
yes,
okay.
it is.
Well,
Yes.
obviously Imola wasn't on the season for a while, so Monza is the
Monza,
home. Yeah.
Italian Grand Prix.
Yes, exactly. So Ferrari fans are wild. You're the wildest person I know, Roger. But it's just a festival of red at Monza. It's phenomenal. And then with the podium, it comes over the track. So you've got everyone crowding onto the track in red. And like when Charles Leclerc won there in red, it was just a sea of red. The podium is over the crowd as opposed to way off, like back in the distance behind all the barriers. I think that and obviously Max obviously winning in the Netherlands last year with such, like, you probably would rarely see a full crowd for one person.
Yeah.
Like at Silverstone, you've got 3 British drivers. They're all there. Obviously, Ferrari fans are just there for Ferrari and whoever's representing them.
Yeah.
The Netherlands were there for Max. Like the Dutch fans were there for Max. So that was incredible, I think. But to answer your question, Monza, just the setup. It's also an amazing track. Like it's phenomenal. So that, and just because of the podium. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, if you go onto YouTube and search Leclerc win in Monza, or some variation of that, and you'll just see one of the most awesome podium presentations out there. So Monza is my question. Great. Or is my answer to your question. So
amazing. There we go.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there.
First episode without a race. So we hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it was answer some of your questions, and if you have any more questions, please, whenever we put a post up on social media in the stories or something, please ask away. We would love to hear what you're thinking, or please send us an email as well to that F1 show, as Alan mentioned earlier.
Awesome. And also thank you to those of you who have given us a rating on whatever podcast platform you have. But if you haven't already, we'd love if you just took a moment to give us a rating now. Just an honest rating. If you think we're a 2-star podcast, say that. But yeah, that, and also we'd love for you to subscribe or follow. I think it's following on Spotify. Subscribe most other places. It means you'll get this episode and a notification of that episode every time it's released. So with that all said, thank you so much for listening, and we will be breaking down the Australian Grand Prix this time next week. So have a good week, everyone. Bye.